Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the next instalment of the Quantum Leap business show going around the world to help small to medium-sized business owners, give them tips, ideas, inspiration, and some insights from people with a variety of different backgrounds on running a business better and your personal life as well. It's my great pleasure today to welcome to the show Danny Sculthorpe. Danny, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, John. Appreciate it.
So, Danny, for those that are not into rugby league, you know that's your game. You're well known in the circles, playing at top level in rugby league circles, and so it's a pleasure to have you on the show. So let's crack on.
Yep.
Danny, you've come through some pretty scary health times. Health times. How are you bearing up at the moment?
Yeah, throughout my career, I've had a few injuries and a few struggles and different stuff and setbacks. But more recently, I've had a couple of issues gone on. I'm struggling with my back again. I've had a couple more prolapsed discs. I've had an MRI scan recently that showed 2 more prolapses above and below a fusion that I had a couple of years ago. But I've also been diagnosed with a brain tumour as well, which was a bit scary. But with the resilience that I've built up through all the stuff that I've been through throughout my life and my career, it wasn't a major problem, because I always talk about control the controllables. If I can't do anything about it, then what's the point in worrying about it? I always think about the things that I can do something about rather than the things that I don't.
Brilliant. That's a great attitude, and I'm sure some people relate to it. Danny, becoming an elite athlete is no easy feat. You were captain of England's schoolboys and what have you. But what was the one thing that you focused on to get to where you got to, bearing in mind to get to elite level of any activity, whether it's business or sport? It's only the very top of the pyramid or top of the tree that get to elite level. What tips what did you do, and what tips would you offer to businesses that want to be at elite level?
Yeah, what I did for my rugby, I was lucky that I had an older brother in my brother Paul, who became on to be 2-time Man of Steel, MBE, and I just saw his work ethic. It wasn't just about training as a young kid on the nights that we were training. It was about the training that we did on the nights that we weren't training. All the extras that we put in. And I just wanted to be like him. I wanted to be looked up to like he was. And I just worked my nuts off. End of the day, hard work beats talent. And we just tried as hard as we can to improve. We always had a rugby ball in our hands. We just wanted to be comfortable. We wanted to have good skill. We was always big kids. But eventually someone was going to catch us up. People were going to catch us up when we was older. But if we worked on our skill when we was younger, then it'd help us and put us in good stead for when we do play professional, or if we played professional. I remember having a coach under 9s for a team called Waterhead in Oldham, and the coach used to say to me, "Danny, you're massive. You're miles bigger than all these kids." He says, "What I'm going to do, I'm going to let you score 1 try every game. And if you score any more, then I'm going to take you off. I want you to be bringing all the other kids on, using some skill, using your passing, do some kicking, all that kind of stuff that I ended up taking into my professional career, even though I was a prop forward. Like Terry Mattison from your neck of the woods, he got me kicking the ball and stuff because I could do it. Even though I was a prop, I was just an overweight standoff. So yeah, just hard work, mate. In any walk of life, what you need to do is be really passionate about what you do. I work in mental health now, and I'm really passionate about that, probably more than I am about rugby league. And it's just, I've got life experience, and if you can put that into your job and enjoy your job, then you can get to the top.
Yep. Yeah, and we'll cover that in a moment. But I can never work out why people are doing stuff they don't like or they're not good at. I just it doesn't compute with me. If you're not good at it or you don't like it, go and find something that you are good at and you do like.
Yeah, 100%.
Daddy, a lot of parents out there will be watching. They might have a son or a daughter that shows promise in any endeavour. What would be your number one tip for any parent out there that owns a business that has a child coming through any sporting program that certainly has any ambitions to take it further?
just think it's pressure. I think a lot of parents put pressure on kids, especially in our game. You know, even from like under 9s, under 10s, a lot of parents are playing their rugby through the kids. And they're putting pressure on them. They want to be the next Wally Lewis, Andy Farrell, wherever you're from. They want them to be the best. But it's about kids rugby and getting them to improve. Is all about enjoyment, like you've just said. You've got to enjoy and you've got to want to do what you're doing. You know, if you're in a job where, like you've just said, if you're not enjoying your job, or you know you're going to just get through the day and stuff like that, then you're not going to perform. And I always talk about something called presenteeism in business. Is a lot of companies think absenteeism is the biggest cost of money in a construction site. Absenteeism is big loss of money, but presenteeism is even bigger, where guys are paid but a million miles away because they're not with it in their heads. They're struggling with their mental health. They're not enjoying the job. So I spoke today at a construction site and I said to the guys, I says, how many of you got to work today, pulled up in the car park and thought, how have I just got here? Because it's just monotonous. They do it without even thinking about it. So they're not even really going to work looking forward to the day ahead, which is pretty sad, really.
Yep. Okay, so you had a pretty rough start to your career. You know, you were overlooked and all sorts of things. How did you keep going and not give up when, you know, it would have been a lot easier just to quit?
For one, I'm not a quitter. Two, I had a strong family behind me. I had 2 older brothers, Lee and Paul, and my mum and dad who still watch my son play now, who never ever missed a game, but they always instilled discipline into me. When I was 15, I dislocated my knee, and the shock of that injury brought on type 1 diabetes, and I become an insulin-dependent type 1 diabetic. And there was no other professional player in the game over here that I could look up to. There was no one I could take advice from. So I just thought I wanted to be the first. I wanted to show other diabetics that you can make it. But unfortunately for me, I struggled for the first 2 or 3 years. I signed a contract at Leeds Rhinos under Hugh McGann and Dean Bell. But I got obsessed with eating a lot of carbohydrates because I didn't want my blood sugars dropping in front of players, in front of the coaches, and ended up putting a lot of weight on. And within 12 months of that contract, I got released. Moved over to Warrington, and within 12 months under Darryl van der Velde, I got released from that contract, and I thought, that's it now. My career's over. I ended up getting a job in a sheet metal shop with my eldest brother making air conditioning units. I thought I'm going to get a proper job, forget the rugby. So I worked my nuts off in that job. I was labouring, I was carrying a lot of heavy metal around. I sorted my diet out, started eating a lot of grapefruit rather than bacon butties in the morning. I'd have a chicken salad rather than a chippy like the rest of the guys I'd have at dinner time. And my way of thinking was, if I want to be that professional rugby league player that I've always wanted to be again, then I need to get my diet right, I need to lose weight, and I need to get fit. So I ended up being in this sheet metal shop for about 6 months, and then I got invited to go down to Rochdale Hornets, who were in the championship. And originally, I'd just captained England schoolboys 2 years before, and I thought to myself, I'm going to be playing in the championship for a team called Rochdale Hornets, who are struggling in that league. What have I done? What am I doing here? But I thought to myself, you know what? I've got no other option. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go to Rochdale. I'm going to work my nuts off. I'm going to have work as hard as I can in pre-season, and then I'm going to see what happens from there. I ended up going to Rochdale, did a great pre-season, 3 months, shed quite a bit of weight. And I started that season, my first season at Rochdale, in the under-19s in the academy, it used to be called then. So I'd start 2 weeks, I'd play in the academy. And then for 4 weeks after that, for the next 4 weeks, I would play academy on a Thursday and then reserves on a Saturday. And then within that 6 weeks period, after 6 weeks of starting at Rochdale, I ended up playing in the academy on a Thursday, the A team on a Saturday, and the first team on a Sunday. And I was playing 3 games of professional rugby league every week. I got myself really fit. And then eventually I ended up playing 80 consecutive games for Rochdale first team. I got the Championship Player of the Year 2 years running. And then in 2001, all my dreams came true and I signed that Super League professional contract at Wigan Warriors.
Wow, what a story! So the persistence certainly paid off. I had Devon Harris from the Jamaican bobsled team on a show previously. He was the push man, and he kept saying, "Keep on pushing." So if you keep on pushing, you never give up, as it were. Danny, you've had your fair share of injuries as well as a career-ending one. That must have been tough.
Yeah, mate. The career-ending one it wasn't so much the injury. So I was lucky enough. I played for Wigan for 5 years, Castleford, Wakefield, Huddersfield, and then in 2010 I signed a 4-year deal at Bradford Bulls at the age of 30. So me and my wife had 2 young kids. She was at home being a full-time mum. It was the longest, best contract, best money that I'd ever been on. And I remember starting pre-season at Bradford Bulls, and I was about 4 weeks into pre-season, and you'll know that pre-season is horrible. It's the worst 3 months of the year by an absolute mile. You're getting flogged on the field and beasted in the gym. Now, I was just starting my 4th week of pre-season. I've just got to know all the coaches, the players, just starting to feel really comfortable with the environment that I was in. And it was a Monday. We'd done a field session in the morning, been absolutely run ragged. We'd had our dinner, and then the afternoon at 1:30 p.m, we started a weight session. It was a legs day, and it was like a power day, which means heavy weight and low reps. I remember we'd done some rowing on the concept 2 to warm up. We'd done some cleans, some snatches, some deadlift, all the powerlifting stuff. And then I went over to the squat rack. 140 kilos on the bar, picked it up, stepped back, and I started doing some squatting. I felt really good. First squat, second squat felt great. I did my 3rd squat with 140 kilos on my back, and I prolapsed the disc in the bottom of my spine, L3-4.
Ouch.
Oh, mate. To be honest, I got a sharp pain, but it was a couple of days later that I really felt it, and I didn't have any pain in my back. It was all the pain in my bum, my leg, my calf, and into my foot. So I went in to see a surgeon a couple of days after the injury, and he told me that I prolapsed the disc. Now, a lot of people think a prolapsed disc is your disc moving out of place, which is completely wrong. When you prolapse a disc, what happens is inside every disc inside your spine, there's a soft toothpaste substance inside. At the L3-4 level, which is quite low down in your back, at the L3-4 level, that toothpaste substance in the middle got squeezed out. It formed around the disc. It set rock hard like bone, and that's what we're trapping the sciatic nerve going down my right leg. A week later, after the diagnosis, I waited for surgery. I had the disc shaved, which released the nerve. I woke up in recovery, and all the pain had gone. And you know what? All I could think to myself was, yes, all the pain's gone. I've got 11 weeks now to get myself fit. I'm going to smash my rehab, smash my physio, and I'm going to make sure I'm ready for round 1. Unfortunately for me, 2 weeks later, I woke up and I was in the most unbelievable, unbearable pains that I can still not explain about now. And I talk about my injuries nearly every day, and I can still not tell people how bad these pains were. I was throwing up everywhere. I phoned the surgeon up and I told him. He said to me, "Danny, you need to come down here and see me straight away." He said, "With you being a type 1 insulin-dependent diabetic, there's more risk of you catching an infection than a normal person would. You need to come down and see me now." So my dad came from Oldham to pick me up in Wigan to take me to the Alexandra Hospital in Manchester. I hobbled through the surgeon's door. When the surgeon looked at me, he shook his head. He went, "Oh, mate, I don't like the look of you." He says, "What I need you to do now," he says, "I'm going to sit you down on this wheelchair. I'm going to take you for a blood test. I'm going to take you for an emergency MRI scan." I had the blood test done. I had the scan done. I went back to his office and I waited in his office for 4 hours for the results. The results came back to show that I'd picked up osteomyelitis, which is a bone-eating infection, but I'd also caught sepsis as well, which is an infection that kills people.
Yep.
Obviously, now you can see that it didn't kill me, but it nearly did. What it meant, though, it meant me going straight from the surgeon's office that day. I didn't even have a chance to go home to see my wife, to see my kids. I went straight from his office onto a ward, and I was there for 3 months. They put me on the strongest pain-killing drugs that you can be on. So I was drinking liquid morphine, Oromorph, like it was water. I was on OxyContin and Oxynorm, a quick-acting and slow-acting morphine-based drug. I was on 100 microgram fentanyl patches, which is stronger than heroin. And I was having shots of ketamine every 4 hours. All strong opiate drugs that people get addicted to. And I ended up being on massive amounts of these drugs for nearly 9 months. And the withdrawal from coming off them drugs was probably worse than the actual injury. It was horrendous, but I managed to get through it just. They fitted a tube through the middle of my chest after a week of being in hospital called a Hickman line that went through the middle of my chest and it connected to my heart and it used to hang down at the front ear. So rather than give me antibiotics through a cannula in my hand, what they used to do was hook this Hickman line up to a drip. The antibiotics, the ticaplanin antibiotics would go through the drip, through the tube, through my chest to my heart. My heart then would flush it around my body, then it'd get to where it needed to be quicker than if they did through that cannula. 4 weeks later, they did another MRI scan to see if these antibiotics was working, and unfortunately for me, they wasn't. The surgeon came over to me with them results. He said, "Danny, I've got to do further surgery. I don't know what I've got to do yet until I open you up in theatre." So when I was being knocked out by the anaesthetist, I didn't have a clue what I was going to wake up to. I woke up in recovery after the surgery, and I remember seeing the surgeon at the other side of the recovery suite, and I remember shouting him over. I just said, "Doc, please come here." He came over to me and I just said to him, I remember crossing my fingers and I just said, "Doc, please give me some good news. I'm 30 years of age, I'm hitting my peak, I'm playing my best rugby." I said, "But more than that, I've got a wife and 2 young kids that I need to look after. My wife's at home being a full-time mum." And I could tell what he was going to say by the look on his face, and he turned around to me and said, "Danny, I can't give you any good news." He said, "The damage this infection has done was so bad. I've had to take the disc out at the L3-4 level. I've had to take a bottom part of your spine away, and I've had to fuse your back with metal cages, rods and screws." When I came out of hospital after them 3 months, for the next 6 months, I was having nurses coming to my house 3 times a day to give me the painkillers, the drugs, the antibiotics. But I'd gone from being this professional rugby league player who's trained 3 and 4 times a day to being able to just about do this. I used to wake up in the morning, and with all the effort that I had in my body, I would get out of my bed and I would just about make it to my couch. At night, I used to get off my couch and just about make it to my bed. I couldn't get to the toilet. I couldn't do any school runs with my kids. I couldn't help my wife at home. I couldn't go to rugby with Louis. I couldn't go dancing with Ellie. All the things that I used to take for granted, I couldn't do. And then I got a phone call off Bradford. But instead of them paying my medical bills, putting me through physio, making sure that I had some sort of quality of life, even if I couldn't play rugby again, Bradford did none of that. What Bradford rang me up to tell me was that they'd ripped up my contract. I lost my job, lost my career, and then we lost our family house when I had 2 young kids and a wife that I couldn't support.
Wow.
And that's when the depression set in.
Yep. And wow, what a inspirational story, as we'll cover in a moment, on what came after that, because we ended up getting through it all. So, Danny, you wrote a book, Highs, Lows, and Hypos, which seems pretty appropriate. What was the aim of that?
Well, the aim of that was to speak more about the mental health side that I do now, and obviously hypos regarding my diabetes, and just giving diabetics that, just give them that confidence that having diabetes doesn't mean that you can't play sport. I remember I did a program for a program called Embarrassing Bodies, and it's a program that was on Channel 4, Dr. Christian, and I remember they came up to Wakefield when I was at Wakefield, and they brought a young kid from Birmingham who'd just been diagnosed with diabetes a few months before, and he packed in playing rugby. So he came up to train with myself, and he didn't know that I was diabetic at the time, so he just thought he was coming up to Wakefield because he was playing rugby and he was just going to do a training session. So we'd done a training session, we'd done quite a bit of running, some kicking and catching and stuff, and then we sat down to have our lunch. And I remember he was very, he was trying to hide his blood machine, that he was testing his blood and he was taking his insulin, he was trying to hide it from me. And then I got my blood kit out, I gave myself my insulin, and he looked at me and he went, "You're not diabetic." I said, "I am type 1. I said, "I've been playing in Super League now for about 8 years and I'm a type 1 diabetic." And he couldn't believe it. He went back to Birmingham, re-signed for that rugby team, and I went back 2 years later to speak to him, and he's doing really, really well.
Brilliant.
And regarding the book, it's just try and educate people that mental health does not discriminate. Like you said, I've played at the highest level. I've played for my country. but I've still struggled with my mental health. But if you suffer with depression, it doesn't mean that you've got it forever.
Yep.
It's just, and a lot of people, as bad as this sounds, a lot of people think suicide is a way out of it, when really suicide is a permanent ending to a part-time problem. And we go out now and we speak to loads and loads of people just to educate and try and break that stigma down regarding mental health, and that it is okay to struggle. And just because you are struggling, you'll not go through it all the time and for the rest of your life.
Yep. So yeah, so my background at any decent level was in cricket, and you'd saw it with people that have been used to a structured lifestyle, elite cricketers. All of a sudden they retire. There's no structure anymore. There's no one monitoring who eats, and all of a sudden they've got no direction in their day. And transiting through that period can be very, very traumatic.
It is. And do you know what sports people lose? They lose their identity. And that's a big problem. I lost my best friend, Terry Newton, to suicide because he lost his identity when he stopped playing. And it is tough because sportsmen in 1 year probably get about 50 highs. Normal people will get 10. So when you go from 50 to 10, it's a massive drop. And that's when people who have retired or had to retire through injury struggle.
Yep. No, it's a big thing, and across all sports. Danny, your brother Paul, he also made it to the top. Was there something in the genes, the water, your parents, the environment, or something else up there? What was that all about?
I don't know, to be honest, mate. It must have been, like you say, in the water in Oldham. It was all big lads, but we're just dedicated. It was excuse me. It's nothing, out there. It was just hard work and dedication, and that, I don't think that can be taught. It was ingrained in us. And when I talk about hard work beats skill any day, you can put skill into someone, but that attitude and that heart, you're born with it. And I think we were, we just wanted to be the best. If I was doing a maths question against my daughter, or playing volleys in the back garden with Louis, who we could do the most, I'd always wanted to win. I've always wanted to win. I've always hated coming second to anyone. Everyone talks about a silver medal or you come second, but you're the first loser. That's what a silver medal means. Yeah,
and that's whether it's in business or recruits or people that work for you, the competitive ones and the ones that have the attitude, right, that because you can always train the skills, usually turn out the best people.
That's it. And in business, in rugby, in football, no one can ever stop improving. You should never want to stop improving.
Yep. Gets boring if you're at the same level.
Oh, absolutely.
So I interviewed John Dutton for the last show. John was the CEO of the Rugby League World Cup, and it's pretty well known in rugby circles that because of COVID and some silly excuses, Australia and New Zealand pulled out right at the 11th hour. Yeah. So that was a good old challenge, having spent 4 years trying to do something. How do you deal with challenges and like that? We get COVID and business people get different things. It's certainly not at that level, certainly not at that publicity. But how do you deal when, everything goes to poo?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really know. You've just got to stick at it. It is what it is. That's what you've got to think about. It is what it is. You move on, you try and deal with it. And like I spoke before, it's about controlling the controllables. John Dutton couldn't do anything about New Zealand and Australia pulling out. So, and I think he did the right thing in the cancellation of the World Cup, because what's the point in playing the World Cup without New Zealand and Australia? Because when you win it, people will say, well, they were in it.
Yep.
So I think he did the right thing, and I think it'll give the Rugby Football League more chance to sell the World Cup as well. So it might not turn out to be a bad thing.
Yep.
There's always a positive out of every negative.
Well, there's a good little soundbite. Danny, you're a big unit, 6'3" and 16 stone as a player. How do you kept on top of your physical fitness after quitting? Well, after being forced to.
Yeah, for a long time I couldn't train. I really struggled, but I got into boxing, I got into boxing because I couldn't run for 6 years but after 18 months after my injury, I got into boxing because I love hitting people. I know it sounds weird, but there's no better feeling for me than when I've trained hard, I go home and have a shower, then I sit down for my tea with my wife and my 3 kids. There's no better feeling in the world. So I got into boxing, and then I started doing a lot of walking. It's helped me build my legs and my back and my strength up. And then 2 years ago, I got the chance to run the London Half Marathon. So I did that, which was a massive achievement for me because I ended up, after my back surgery, I ended up having 24 operations on my right knee. I caught sepsis again, which went into my leg. I ended up having 24 operations on my right knee. And after my 8th operation, Wigan Hospital were going to chop my leg off.
Oof.
But I wouldn't let them. So I ended up going down to Chelsea and Westminster Hospital to see a surgeon who'd operated on our Paul. And our Paul's first game back from major knee surgery was St Helens versus Brisbane Broncos in the World Club Challenge. Now, Paul's first game back was that game. He ended up scoring 2 tries. He kicked 2 goals. He got a drop goal and he got man of the match. So I thought to myself, well, this surgeon can't be that bad. I'll go and see him. Went down to Chelsea and Westminster, and Andrew Williams, should I say, he did 13 further operations on me and give me my life back. So if Wigan Hospital would have chopped my leg off or fused my knee, that were the 2 options they had, then I wouldn't be doing what I do now. I wouldn't be going around the country. I'm a wellbeing and lifestyle coach for the NHS. I'm a qualified PT, and I wouldn't have done that half marathon. I wouldn't be coaching my son now. All the things that I got told I would never do, I just give them one of them and thought, I will.
Yep. So you're making your name around the traps now in the mental health sphere, and I guess you can talk about it from the heart, not from the textbook. Having experienced it all, that what's the joys in that? What's a couple of tips for anybody that's experiencing some downers at the moment? What have you got? A couple of things?
So when my depression kicked in, I got to a point where I wouldn't speak to anyone. I did the typical bloke thing where I put that mask on, pretended I was okay, and that snowballed until it became a major problem when I started suffering from suicidal thoughts. And I remember pulling up at a car park in Wigan with a bottle of gin and a box full of opiate drugs that had killed half of Wigan, and I was going to take my own life. For some reason I didn't, and I don't know what it was that stopped me, because if I try and go back there now, I'm probably happier now than I've ever been. I'm more passionate about mental health than I was about rugby, which is a massive statement for me to say. And if I try and go back to that place now, I can't, which is a really good sign. I remember coming home from that car park, I was cheesed off, I had a plan, and now I didn't know what I was going to do. I put the drink and the drugs away, got back on the couch. I carried on ignoring my wife, snapping at my kids all the time. But the biggest thing that I did that saved my life, I started opening up to my brothers and my friends. And I remember they saw a massive difference in the way I was, the things I was saying, the way I was acting. And I remember my mum, my dad, my wife walked into the front room, and my mum's exact words to me were, "Danny, tell us what's going on." And I thought to myself, right, if I don't tell you now, then I never will. I'm going to be another stat. I'm going to be another suicide. So I thought, right, I'm going to tell you. So I told them everything. I told them about the suicidal thoughts. I told them how I felt like I'd let them all down. I would lost everything because of me. Even though my injury wasn't my fault, my wife and my kids still lost everything because of me. And me just getting that off my chest for the first time, it was like an unbelievable feeling. It felt like a massive weight had gone there and then. So we spent the next 3 or 4 hours talking and crying, and we decided to go and see my GP. My GP put me on some antidepressant medication, which helped me. But medication doesn't suit everyone. But the biggest thing that saved my life more than anything was talking. And talking's free. That suits me down to the ground because I'm tight. And I got talking to a counsellor from a clinic called Sporting Chance that was set up by the Rugby Football League, which Sporting Chance was set up by Tony Adams, the ex-England and Arsenal football captain. Excuse me. And I got talking to my counsellor, a guy called Colin Bland, and I used to see him twice a week. Then it went to once a week, to once a fortnight, once a month, once every 3 months. And now we just talk as friends on the phone. So I ended up getting invited to go down to a State of Mind mental health charity. They were just setting it up on the back of Terry Newton's death. And over the last 10 years, we've been out and we've told our stories. We've given people the coping mechanisms to notice signs and symptoms, what you need to do, what you should be staying away from, the drink and the drugs that people normally go to. And we've spoke to over 250,000 people in 10 years, and we've been told at least 200 times that we've changed someone's mind on taking their own life, which for me is priceless. If I can do this job for the next 20 years and save one life, then I believe it's job done.
Yep.
But what I always think back to is that if there was no stigma regarding mental health 10, 12 years ago, when Terry took his own life, could I have seen the signs and symptoms in him? Could I have, asked him a few questions? A, what would he have answered? B, could something different have happened? And C, could his two girls still have a dad today? It's just a massive shame that that stigma stopped him coming forward and seeking help. Because what I know is that depression, anxiety, stress is not what's killing people. What's killing people is the stigma that's wrapped around it. So, it's as daft as it sounds and as easy as it sounds, talking is massive, and it is a lifesaver, but also listening as well. And there is a difference between listening to someone and hearing someone. You hear someone, yeah, but if you listen, you take things on, you give them, not advice, but you give them support, and where help and support is available, it is massive for people. It really is. And you don't have to be giving them information after information. It might just be that when they're telling you something and you're agreeing and just telling them what you would do and stuff like that, it's just giving a different perspective. And perspective in mental health is massive.
Yep.
Everything I've been through has been hard. It's been really tough. But I look at other people, like an ex-soldier who's one of my mates, who in Afghanistan 3 or 4 years ago had both his legs and one of his arm blew off. And if you put things into perspective, my life could be a lot worse.
Yep. Wow. That's so inspirational. Danny, you talk about emotional intelligence. Can you just share what that involves?
Emotional intelligence is just about recognizing what emotions you're in. We talk about anger management, and we talk about being happy, being sad. Anger management's one that I talk upon, and we do get angry, but it can also be a healthy emotion as well. Because if you're feeling attacked, or you're feeling invalidated, or you're feeling deceived, it can be a really good emotion to have. So we have something in us called the fight or flight situation, and you probably know about that. And you see things in the news about fight or flight where cars are on top of people and they get that ridiculous amount of strength that they can lift it off people, a car. Now, you can go into a gym for 100 times a day for 10 years and you'll never, ever get that strength.
Yep.
The fight or flight gives you that strength to do it because of the cortisol and the adrenaline that your body gives you. And it's about recognizing what signs, what emotions that you were in and how you deal with that. So I work with a guy called Phil Vivas, who you probably know. Phil, Aussie, great rugby league player, played over 500 games. And he talks about when he was struggling, what he used to do is that he used to have something called a rainbow diary. So he'd wake up, he'd write down what emotion he was in, why he was in that emotion. He'd put a colour to it. So if he was in a bad mood, he'd put black. If he was in a good mood, he'd put yellow. And then he'd put down, if he was in a bad mood, how he got out of that situation later on in the day. What did I do to get out of that situation? So within a 6-month period, he had a big filing cabinet. So every time he was in that, he looked back at this filing cabinet and he said, right, I had to do that. This time I did that to get out of it. It made me feel better. And it's just like that. That's the intelligent, emotional intelligence that I talk about.
Yep. Danny, have you ever thought of getting into management other than with your kids' teams, or doing more media work? And I guess you do a bit now, but a lot of people get from where you've come from end up there.
I don't think I'd get involved with a professional game. No, I love coaching the kids. I love seeing smiles on kids' faces. I think when it becomes professional and it's people's jobs and that, it's too serious for me. I love what I do. I love what I do, honestly. I can't tell you how much I love what I do. So yeah, I'm not into, I mean, I do a lot of media work through the mental health work that I do. So yeah, I get enough, I make a good living out of it. I look after my kids and my wife, and that's all I want to do. And I want to enjoy work.
Yeah.
There is a lot of pressure in sport, and it's a short career. You don't know how long you're going to be there. You don't know how the players are going to perform, which will affect your job and stuff like that. So, I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
Brilliant, brilliant. Danny, how have you got through COVID? It affects people in different ways, and getting around, I guess you're doing Zoom calls or consultations, what have you, but what's been some strategies there that have worked for you?
Yeah, just training in the garden. When we was allowed to go out for an hour, I were doing 10Ks. Just down to the canal and back was exactly 10K. So I used to take either my dog out for a walk, or I'd run a 10K with my son. He got sick of it, but every time he didn't want to go, I'd go on my own. And then when we got more and more open, then I used to go down the canal, and I used to do like 20-25 kilometre walks with my dog. And last 5 kilometres, I used to carry the dog home because he was that tired. But yeah, just fresh air, and don't know, just trying to smile. Smiling's massive for you. Just try and not let things get on top of you, because it can easily snowball out of control. And it weren't too bad for me. I knew what to do. I knew that I was still working through, like you said, through Microsoft Teams and Zoom and stuff like that. So I was still working, still seeing people's faces, and still making a difference, which is what I'm all about.
Yeah. So Danny, you must have rubbed shoulders with some pretty interesting and inspirational people during your life so far. Does anybody stand out? If so, why?
I think I always loved Brett Hodgson. He was probably the best player I've ever played with. Australian bloke, fullback, unbelievable. He used to have a KFC and a McDonald's every day for his dinner, but he was about 10 stone, which used to do my head in. Andrew Farrell, who was just the ultimate professional. We used to train at 8:30 at Wigan on every day, but he'd always be in at 6:30. By the time everyone had got in, he'd have done a 10K run, he'd done all his stretches, his pre-ab, all that kind of stuff before everyone got in it. And it showed on the field. He was just the ultimate professional. He was one of them people that you were just in awe of, even though he's one of your teammates. You just wanted to be like him. And it was a real big learning curve playing with people like him. People like Quentin Pongia, who used to do a lot of wrestling and boxing with. It used to fill me in all the time, but it were good. And the best personality that I've been with sportsmen is probably Nigel Benn. I was lucky enough that we met him in Mallorca. He was DJing, but I didn't see him through the nightlife stuff. My friends had a bar in Mallorca, and he invited him down to come and visit us, and he was a Wigan fan. So we come down, it was the day we were leaving. So we ended up with our suitcase going for a breakfast, and he came in. And we said, we need to go now after I met him and stuff. And he said, why were you going? I said, I'm going to the airport. And he said, what airport are you going to? I said, it's about 30 minutes. And he said, yeah, come on, I'll take you in my car. And it was funny this, because he took us it was a Porsche Carrera Jeep. He took us to the airport, parked his car up, wheeled our 2 suitcases into airport. And I remember this kid running over to us, and he ran over to us. He stood in the middle of me and Nigel Benn, and he said, Danny, can I have your autograph? And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe you've just said that. You shouldn't be saying that to me when I'm stood with an absolute legend of a boxer like that. I couldn't believe it. It just made me laugh, and it's one of some things I'll never forget.
Brilliant. Danny, what's next on the horizon other than your journey with sharing the mental health message? Is there anything else that's catching your attention?
Not at the minute, no. Just trying to stay happy. Just carry on enjoying the work I'm doing, and just keep breaking that stigma down. Just giving blokes that chance to open up. And men are absolutely hopeless at speaking. And the more people like myself who worked in a real alpha male type business and see that it is okay for me to speak, that'll give them that encouragement for them to speak. Saving lives, there is nothing better that you can do than save a life, and that's what I do every day of the week. So there's nothing else I want to do.
Danny, it's been inspirational and emotional having you on the show, and I've interviewed more than 100 people of all walks of life that have done some pretty amazing things. But I think what you've done has been extraordinary, and people will certainly get some inspiration from the session today. And I really, really thank you, and I'm sure people watching will as well. So, Danny Sculthorpe, thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.